Halloween is painted in candy colors and cardboard frights, the one night where fear is pretend and the monsters stay on porches. Plastic skeletons, paper bats, children laughing through superhero masks. That's the picture most of us carry. On October 31st, 2012, in a modest Michigan trailer park, something malicious crossed an unlocked threshold and turned an ordinary evening of trick-or-treat plans into a date burned into memory. A family who had every reason to feel safe was blindsided by the person they would have least expected to fear. True crime, conspiracies, cults, serial killers, murder, subjects we analyze because the real monsters never wear rubber masks. This one is a bonus case for the season, short but heavy, the kind of horror that doesn't fade when the porch lights shut off and the decorations come down. So take a breath, steady your nerves, and follow this Halloween story that begins warm and ordinary and ends with a cold truth about trust. Born on March 26, 1988 in Midland, Michigan, Rebecca grew up as one of 4 children in the Gay family. Her parents, Thomas and Sally Gay, raised her alongside her brothers, James and Aaron, and her sister Deborah. From early on, she showed a calm, kind spirit. That was the trait people always mentioned first: gentle and caring, sweet in a way that never seemed put on. At Bullock Creek High School, where she graduated in 2007, teachers and classmates remembered her as a quiet, pretty girl who did more than her share to help. She joined the school's equestrian team, channeling a love for animals, and volunteered for the school's archery shoot fundraiser, an event created to help families in crisis. That instinct to care for others, even as a teenager, said a lot about who she would become. Superintendent Charlie Schwedler later summed it up simply, calling her a sweet, sweet girl. And it was a phrase that felt like an understatement if you knew how consistently she showed up for other people. Even in high school, she was thinking about a path for herself. She studied cosmetology while still a student and followed through on that plan after graduation, completing her training at In Session School of Cosmetology. She wanted to help people feel beautiful and confident, another extension of the way she gave to others. Her career took shape like she thought it would, but then her life changed in a way that would reshape everything. Around 2009, she became a mother to Conway Cliff Kelly. She was about 21, a young single parent navigating everything that role demands. People close to her said she approached motherhood with her whole heart. Conway was the center of her world, her purpose, her joy. At night, there was always the same routine: story time, then prayers with Conway before bed. Her Bible and her devotionals sat on her nightstand, a quiet anchor in her life and a sign of the faith that guided her when things were hard. Family described her as completely devoted to her son and very family-orientated, the kind of person who made sure everyone else was okay before thinking about herself. She was hands-on with Conway and kept a cooperative relationship with his father, also a Midland resident, making sure her boy got time with both parents consistently. That took effort, but she made it part of the rhythm of her life. Work was another piece of the puzzle. She used her cosmetology training at Bo Rick's Hair Care, focused on building a steady income. But the hours weren't always a fit for a single mom trying to be home evenings and manage childcare. In 2012, she chose stability over glamour, took a job at the Goodwill store in Mount Pleasant. It wasn't the dream job she'd trained for, but she met it with the same steady work ethic, and it paid off. By October 2012, she had already been promoted to a management position. That was a proud moment, a sign she was doing what she needed to build a better life. To save money and shorten the commute, she moved to a mobile home in Broomfield Valley Trailer Park on Coldwater Road in Broomfield Township, Isabella County, about 11 miles west of Mount Pleasant. The trailer park was modest. She made it into a home. Family pictures, a child's toys, an organized life aimed at giving Conway the security and love he needed. People close to her described her the same way again and again. Her mother, Sally, called her the heart and soul of the family. At Goodwill, co-workers saw someone reliable, hardworking, steady, and by fall 2012, things felt like they were finally aligning for her. It wasn't just the promotion or the home near her job. She was in love again with Aaron Quinn, and soon the two were engaged. A blended family was forming, a future opening that included both Conway and Aaron. Life was busy, but it was working. She had stability, purpose, love, and a family that supported her. Her nieces and nephews adored her. She made time for them too. The holiday she loved most with Conway was right around the corner. Halloween in that trailer was done up for a 3-year-old boy's delight. Rebecca put up 8 scarecrows, hung pictures of pumpkins and festive decorations so the place felt warm, playful, safe. She and Aaron planned to take 3-year-old Conway trick-or-treating that night. It was supposed to be a simple family evening: costumes, laughter, a bag gradually growing heavy with candy, the kind of memory that becomes a touchstone for a child and a mother who worked hard to provide moments like that. She was scheduled to work at Goodwill earlier in the day, then come home and get Conway ready for his first real Halloween outing with his mom and her fiancé. She had the costume planned and the evening set. But Rebecca never made it to work on October 31st, 2012. When she didn't show up for her shift that morning, it instantly raised alarms. She was reliable. She didn't miss work without calling. A coworker decided to check on her and drove to Broomfield Valley Trailer Park. What greeted them was unsettling. Her car was there. The door to the mobile home was unlocked. Her purse sat on the counter, untouched. Rebecca was gone. So was her 3-year-old son, Conway. It was too quiet in a place where there should have been morning noise, a mom and a little boy getting ready for a special night. Police were contacted immediately. The Isabella County Sheriff's Department opened a missing person investigation and began canvassing the area. Deputies knocked on doors, asked neighbors when they last saw her, tried to stitch together a timeline from the night before. It was thin. She had last been seen on October 30th, and now more than 12 hours had passed without a trace. Concern in the small community turned to fear. Pastor John D. White, engaged to Rebecca's mother, Sally Gay, stood before the 14 members of Christ Community Fellowship Church and asked them to pray for Rebecca's safe return. Sally was beside herself, waiting, hoping, begging in prayer that her daughter would walk back through the door. Then a small piece of relief surfaced in the middle of a growing nightmare. Conway was found safe by John White. Knowing how worried Conway's father was, White dropped the child off at the father's workplace, which was the Midland Meyer grocery store, and the police were called. Conway was unharmed, but he couldn't tell anyone where his mother was. He was only 3 years old. For 20 aching hours, Rebecca's family held on to hope. Perhaps she had left unexpectedly. Maybe there was an explanation. Maybe she would come home. Sally kept praying for that safe return. Police worked through the obvious steps. They interviewed neighbors, talked to Aaron Quinn, Rebecca's fiancé, spoke with her ex-boyfriend, and anyone else who had contact with her in recent days. One more name sat right at the edge of the circle: John White, the 55-year-old pastor engaged to Rebecca's mother. Investigators did what they always do. They looked. What they found was not what any of his congregants imagined. At Christ Community Fellowship and in the surrounding community, people thought they knew Pastor White. He preached about redemption, transformation, the promise that anyone could be born again. He often told his tiny congregation, "We need to check closely the seeds we sprout in ourselves. Nothing can be hidden from God." But White had a great deal hidden, and it went far beyond anything a congregation could suspect. John Douglas White, born in 1957, had served in the Navy and worked as a long-haul trucker. Then his life veered into violence. His first known attack happened in 1980 when he was 22, living in Battle Creek, Michigan, and married. White invited a 17-year-old neighbor, Teresa Etherton, to his basement to see his stock car racetrack set up. It was the kind of friendly invitation a neighbor might accept. Without warning, he attacked her 15 times, attempting to take her life. As she lay there, bleeding and fading, he told her, "You're going to go now. I'm really sorry you had to go like this, but what the war? You're just a woman, a monster." Against all odds, Ethet survived. Because she lived, that chilling statement was preserved in her memory. White was arrested and sent to prison, but he later won an appeal, arguing his attorney had failed to pursue an insanity defense. Incredibly, he was released in 1983 after serving just 2 years, with 2 years of probation and mandatory mental health treatment. Years later, Ethet recognized his voice in a line, turned, and saw him smiling at her. Nothing happened to her in that moment, but the horror of seeing the man who tried to kill her out in the world after such a short time served, there is no word for that kind of fear. White carried on with life. He remarried, he had children, but the violence against women didn't stop. On July 11, 1994, 26-year-old Vicky Sue Wall disappeared from Comstock Township, Michigan. Wall worked at the same textile company where White handled maintenance. They were having an affair, despite White having 2 children and another baby on the way with his wife. Surveillance captured Wall getting into White's black pickup at 3 a.m. That was the last time anyone saw her alive. 6 weeks later, her badly decomposed body turned up in a rural area, not dressed except for a shirt and a bra around her neck. White refused to cooperate with police, refused a lie detector test. Luminol testing showed blood evidence in his truck, but with limited proof, prosecutors offered a plea deal. White pleaded no contest to involuntary manslaughter and received 8 to 15 years in prison. While in prison, White said something that should have changed everything. To a prison psychologist, he admitted he had persistent violent fantasies about killing women and having relations with their corpses. It's a sentence that makes the blood run cold. Yet somehow, this critical information never made its way to the parole board or the communities where he would eventually move. He was released in 2007 after serving only 12 years for killing someone. He went north to Isabella County, found religion publicly, and recast himself as a pastor. He led the tiny Christ Community Fellowship Church in Mount Pleasant. He lived in a trailer and began dating Sally Gay, who was a dedicated member of the church. Sally did not know the full story of White's past, neither did Rebecca. By 2012, Sally and White were engaged. He lived one street away from Rebecca and was woven into her daily life. He babysat Conway often while she worked. He handled the Wednesday custody exchanges, dropping Conway at his father's workplace, as he did on October 31, 2012. That arrangement said a lot about how much Rebecca trusted him. She trusted him with her child. The deeper investigators looked, the worse the picture became. White could not cleanly explain his movements on the night of October 30th into the morning of October 31st. His story shifted, first saying he hadn't seen Rebecca, then acknowledging that he had been to her trailer. Under pressure, his composure began to fracture. On November 1, 2012, investigators were fully briefed on Teresa Atherton and Vicky Sue Wall. They knew they were dealing with a man who had a long pattern of violence toward women. During interrogation, detectives leaned into his role as a religious leader. They told him Rebecca's body would deteriorate in the cold, wet weather. They said her family deserved a proper Christian burial. They tried to appeal to any remaining strand of conscience. After hours without an alibi, and with the weight of his past heavy in the room, John Douglas White confessed. The details were horrifying. From his confession and the evidence, prosecutors reconstructed the final hours. Late on October 30th, he sat in his trailer drinking beer and watching Necro. For anyone unfamiliar, the term in this context refers to material that is beyond disturbing, involving people with the deceased. This was not a new obsession for White. He had already admitted to a prison psychologist that he fantasized about violence and the dead. In the early hours of Halloween, he walked the short route to Rebecca's home. He knew the door would likely be unlocked. It was a close-knit park. Family lived a street apart. He slipped in and moved toward the bedroom. Rebecca was asleep. The Bible and devotional on her nightstand were the last things she had touched, likely after prayers and bedtime with Conway. She never saw him coming. He struck her with a rubber mallet, hitting her head multiple times until she lost consciousness. The blows were meant to incapacitate but not kill immediately. Then he produced a zip tie he had brought with him, premeditation made physical, and cinched it tight around her neck. That is how 24-year-old Rebecca Gay, a single mother, died. Death came from asphyxiation in her own bed. What came next is unspeakable, but it is part of understanding the horror of the crime. He removed her clothing, and, by his own admission, filtered through selective memory, likely acted out the fantasies he had fed for years. He claimed not to remember exactly. The evidence and circumstances point to the worst. When he was done, he wrapped her and dragged her out into the dark. He took her body about a mile away and left it in a ditch behind pine trees, tacking, exposed to the elements as if she were a discarded object. Then he returned to her trailer. Conway was still asleep, a little boy only feet away from what had just happened to his mother. White stayed until morning. He woke the child, dressed him in his Halloween costume, and drove him to the Midland Meyer parking lot to meet his father, acting ordinary, as though he hadn't erased a family's future hours earlier. With the confession on record, officers found Rebecca's body where he said it would be, in a shallow ditch behind a cluster of pines about 1 mile from her mobile home. The medical examiner determined she had been beaten in the head with a blunt object and killed by a zip tie tightened around her neck. Her clothing had been removed except for a shirt. She had been dead for over 24 hours by the time she was recovered. The Isabella County prosecutor, Larry Burdick, initially charged White with first-degree murder. Life without parole was on the table. The confession, the body location only he could have known, the history of violence, and the physical evidence created a case that felt straightforward. In March 2013, White agreed to plead guilty to second-degree murder in exchange for prosecutors not seeking a life sentence. That plea meant a sentencing range of 29 to 60 years. Some family members were angry about the deal, convinced White deserved the absolute maximum. Prosecutors explained that the plea would spare the family from a long, detailed trial and likely keep White in prison for the rest of his life given his age. He was in his mid-50s. A 29 to 60-year sentence would probably outlast his lifespan. At the plea hearing, White stood in an orange jumpsuit and admitted what he had done. He showed no emotion while recounting. The courtroom was filled with friends and family wearing white t-shirts bearing Rebecca's name. They listened while the man who wrecked their lives spoke in flat, empty words. On April 30th, 2013, John Douglas White faced sentencing before Judge Mark Duthie. The judge had received a stack of letters from people who loved Rebecca, all asking for the maximum. Sally Gay spoke for 20 minutes. It was one of the hardest moments imaginable, addressing the man she had intended to marry, a man she had trusted around her daughter and grandson. Rebecca was always kind to you. She spent time with you, defended you, she said. She described her daughter as the heart and soul of their family, someone taken from them by a man they had welcomed. Rebecca's sister Deborah spoke next, pushing for something bigger to come from the loss. She called for a violent offender registry and said, "My sister might be alive if she had known about White's violent history." She argued that just as communities are notified about sexual offenders, they should be warned about people with histories of violent crimes against women. Aaron Quinn, the fiancé who had planned a future with Rebecca, submitted a statement about losing the person he intended to marry. Conway's father spoke about a little boy who would grow up without his mother. Extended family described the hole left in their lives. Prosecutor Larry Burdick asked the judge for the maximum he could impose. He said this defendant should never, ever walk free in our society again. White's attorney, James Paul, argued for leniency, describing White as remorseful and haunted by the fantasies rather than embracing them. In a room full of people forever changed by what White did, the argument landed with a thud. When given his chance to speak, White said, "I'm sorry for my crime. That's all I have to say." No explanation, no soul-searching, no acknowledgement of the wake of pain behind him. Judge Duthie's disgust was clear. He imposed a sentence of 56 to 85 years. With White at 56 years old, the sentence was effectively life. The judge said he was a danger to society and had an escalating pattern of violence against women. White was sent to the Michigan Reformatory to begin serving his time. Prison officials classified him as high profile because of the nature of his crimes and his status as a former pastor who had murdered a young mother. That designation often means a person is at risk behind bars, but White did not serve even 5 months. On August 28, 2013, at approximately 4 a.m., Corrections officers on routine rounds found White having tied bed sheets together completely unsubscribed. Staff tried to revive him. It was too late. He was pronounced dead at 56. He chose the coward's exit instead of facing years of accountability. For Rebecca's family, the news brought mixed emotions. Some felt cheated of the small measure of justice that comes from knowing he would live out the consequences day after day. Others felt relief that they would be spared future parole hearings and the dread of his potential release. When Sally was told about his death, she said she felt numb. It could not bring Rebecca back, could not reverse the damage, could not unring any bell. What this case lays bare are failures far beyond one man's evil. White admitted to a prison professional that he harbored violent fantasies about killing women and violating their bodies after death. The Michigan Departments of Corrections sent warnings to law enforcement agencies in 2007, labeling him dangerous. And yet, none of that translated into real protections. He was able to become a pastor, step into a small congregation, gain the trust of a mother and child, and commit another murder. The system failed in the duty to connect deeply relevant information with the people who needed it most. In the time since Rebecca's death, her family has focused on building meaning out of loss. Deborah Gay has been the most vocal advocate, pressing for legislation to create a violent offender registry similar to the registries that notify communities about sexual offenders. The idea isn't complicated. If Rebecca had known about White's violent history, she likely would have kept him away from her home and her son. She likely would not have trusted him at all. She might be alive. That is the power of knowledge, and that is the gap her family wants to close. Conway, the little boy who was just 3 when his mother was murdered, has been raised by his father, supported by both sides of the family. A trust fund was created in his mother's name for his education and future needs, so that the practical realities of growing up without her could be at least partly addressed. Halloween is still the hardest day. What should be a time for giggles and costumes is overshadowed by October 31st, 2012. Sally has spoken about being barely able to function on that date, replaying the suspended hours when Rebecca was missing and the awful revelation that followed. Every year, the family holds a memorial for Rebecca. They gather and say her name, tell stories about her kindness, her devotion to Conway, her hard work, her plans. They keep those memories alive for Conway so that he knows who his mother was, even if his own memories of her are hazy. In 2022, on the 10th anniversary of her death, the family organized a memorial-run walk to raise money for domestic violence prevention and victim support services. More than 200 people participated. After a decade, her story still moved people, still compelled them to act. It is easy to let the narrative tilt toward the man who did the harm. That's an instinct we have to resist. It is not the story of a depraved man who hid behind religious language while fantasizing about cruelty. The story of a young woman with a generous heart who loved her son fiercely. The story of someone who worked hard, built home in a small space, and dreamed about a future where her family felt safe and happy. She believed in second chances and saw the good in people. She was a daughter who made Thomas and Sally proud, a sister whose presence lit up family events, a mother who read bedtime stories and offered prayers every night, who checked on her child one more time before sleeping, who placed her Bible and devotional on the nightstand because faith steadied her, a fiancé excited to marry Aaron Quinn, an aunt who brought happiness to 8 nieces and nephews. Those are the roles that defined her life. Rebecca Gay should have lived to see Conway grow up. She should have celebrated anniversaries, birthdays, Halloweens that ended with warm baths and too much candy. She should have worn her dress and married Aaron. The fact that she did not is a reminder that no amount of decoration can make the world perfectly safe. Only truth, vigilance, and the sharing of critical information can do that. Her family's push for change is part of honoring who she was, practical, kind, and focused on helping others avoid harm. When we talk about cases like this, we return to the basic facts again and again because that is where the lessons sit. She was born March 26, 1988, in Midland, Michigan. She was one of 4. She graduated in 2007 from Bullock Creek High School. She joined the equestrian team and volunteered at the school's archery shoot fundraiser. She trained at Incession School of Cosmetology. She worked at Bo Ricks Hair Care and later at Goodwill in Mount Pleasant, where she was promoted to management by October 2012. She moved to Broomfield Valley Trailer Park on Coldwater Road in Broomfield Township, Isabella County, about 11 miles west of Mount Pleasant. She was engaged to Aaron Quinn. She was the mother of Conway Cliff Kelly, born around 2009. Her nightly routine was story time and prayers. She placed her Bible and devotionals on her nightstand. She decorated for Halloween with 8 scarecrows and pumpkin pictures. She planned to take 3-year-old Conway trick-or-treating. On October 31, 2012, she never made it to work. A co-worker found her car, her unlocked door, her purse on the counter. She and Conway were gone. Police canvassed. Pastor John D. White asked the 14 members to pray. He found Conway and brought him to the Midland Mire. For 20 hours, the family waited. Investigators looked into Aaron, an ex-boyfriend, and White. They discovered a past that included the 1980 attack on Teresa Atherton in Battle Creek and the 1994 killing of Vicky Sue Wall in Comstock Township. They found a man who had pleaded no contest to involuntary manslaughter, received 8 to 15 years, served 12, and in prison had told a psychologist he fantasized about killing women and violating their bodies afterward, information that never reached a parole board. He had been released in 2007, moved to Isabella County, become a pastor in Mount Pleasant, lived in a trailer, and gotten engaged to Sally. He babysat Conway. He handled the Wednesday custody drop-offs. On November 1, 2012, detectives appealed to his religious identity. He confessed. He said that late on October 30th, he sat drinking and watching Necro. That early Halloween, he went to Rebecca's unlocked trailer, struck her with a rubber mallet, tightened a zip tie around her neck, and later dumped her body about a mile away behind pine trees. He returned, stayed the night, dressed Conway in his Halloween costume, and brought him to the Midland Mire to meet his father. Rebecca's body was found where he said it would be. The medical examiner confirmed multiple head blows and asphyxiation. The prosecutor, Larry Burdick, initially charged first-degree murder. In March 2013, White pleaded to second-degree murder for a 29 to 60-year range. At the plea hearing, he was emotionless. On April 30, 2013, Judge Mark Duthie sentenced him to 56 to 85 years and called him a danger to society. In August 2013, he was found at approximately 4 a.m., having tied bed sheets together, completely unsubscribed. He was pronounced dead at 56. His death left family with mixed feelings. Sally said it did not bring Rebecca back. The case became a catalyst for calls to create a violent offender registry. Deborah Gay argued her sister might be alive if she had known the full history. Conway was raised by his father with support from both families. A trust fund was established. Each Halloween is a memorial and a test of strength. And in 2022, over 200 people participated in a run-walk organized by the family to raise money for domestic violence prevention and victim support. None of that changes what happened in a single night. It does not rewrite it, but it is how a family made space for memory and action. It is how we remember the person at the heart of the case, not just the person who caused harm. So we end by saying her name again. Rebecca Gay, a mother who prayed with her child at night and read to him under warm light. A daughter and sister who kept family stitched together. A worker who showed up and earned a promotion. A woman who believed in better days and finer joys. She mattered. She is loved. She should still be here. Thank you for spending time with this case and for honoring Rebecca by listening all the way through. If you found this meaningful and want more stories told with care and detail, please like this source and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. Your support helps these stories reach people who might need to hear them. Stay safe, and we'll talk again soon.